Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name's Shauna Forrest, appropriately named. I am the current president of the Lane Cove Bushland and Conservation Society. I've been in the society for, goodness knows, around 30 years and have learnt from those who stood in front of the bulldozers many decades ago. I'm going to just give a brief little talk. The Lane Cove Bushland and Conservation Society was formed following the outrage and activism by those living adjacent to the bushland here, when the country club, where we are, approached the Lane Cove Council in 1971 with a plan to extend the 9th hole of the golf course into the eastern part of the Osborne Park Valley. The newly formed society raised money to support a court case to prevent the development, but the council finally settled out of court. Hello, Bushland Park. We are privileged to have Norma Stuart here today to give us first-hand insights from the field as one of the 1970s key activists, a founder and mentor of the society, a contributor to the first plan of management for bushland and long-term member of the Lane Cove Bushland Management Advisory Committee.
Good on you, Norma.
Yay to Norma. Norma has intimate and historic knowledge of Lane Cove's reserves and their bush regeneration. Guided bushwalks have been an important activity for the society, along with encouraging locals and the council to protect and care for, plant and grow native plants. The society holds very popular biannual native plant stalls in the plaza and sells endemic species to create habitat, food for wildlife. Members provide advice on selection and care. Plan management and conservation of the green, urban and bushland environment, along with bush regeneration, are central concerns for the society. In 1978, the Society supported Joan Bradley in the regeneration of Warraroon Reserve, which is the reserve I live on. We are often mistaken for a bush regeneration group, and members may not, or they may be active bush regenerators. However, the Society's activities and concerns have always been much broader. Over the 50 years of the Society, many members have been Lane Cove councillors. I'd like to say we have 3 of the councillors here today, and thank you for coming along. At the last council elections, quite a few members actually stood for council. The society has always done that because, you know, if you want to make change, you have to be there at the very beginning. Too late once it's gone through council. These councillors have always advocated for the preservation of the environment, while they and other members volunteer on committees of council. For example, we actively campaigned against New South Wales government forced amalgamations due to the likely negative effects on our natural environment. Lane Cove Council dedicates a certain amount towards bush regeneration and looking after the environment, whereas the council we may have been amalgamated with, we would have just been lost, been swamped. The Society assisted in the publication of several books, including Growing the Native Plants of Lane Cove by Judy Messer, available on Council's website to download. The first Bushwalks in Lane Cove, written by Don Dove in 1982, then a member, and it's now in its 7th edition. In 2011, 3 young mothers, members of the Society, founded the Bush Kids program to engage young children with nature. I don't know why this hasn't galloped into a lot more councils. It is so popular. Council partnered with the Society in 2016 to further develop and run the very popular program and enjoy a coordinator. There are hundreds of families participating annually in this Bush Kids. Conservation involves consideration of the built environment and urban bushland and reserves. This endeavour requires monitoring development applications for their density, floor space ratio, deep soil planting, setbacks from bush care, and more. For almost 50 years, this was undertaken by founding member and architect, Norma's husband, Doug Stuart, and architect and town planner Graham Holland and Margaret Begomi, who has been, until recently, also a town planner helping with that. And today, society members are monitoring developments. So thank you very much for coming today, and I'd like to introduce Norma, who's going to give you a much more in-depth, hands-on about Bushland Park.
Hello everyone, it's lovely to be with you this morning, and I'd just like to tell you, we moved into Lane Cove in 1970, moved into a new house that was part of a new subdivision around this wonderful bushland valley. We were so delighted to find such a wonderful, wonderful site, and we loved it. We met up with similar families. There was quite a big subdivision round in Kogan Place and into Osborne Road. And we met up with other new families that had moved in. And we were all terribly pleased to be living on the edge of this. One of the people who was renting one of the properties that had just been built was a biochemist, Brian Patterson, who was very keen about native plants. It read a book by Harris Thistle in England and fell in love with the idea of the native plants that were described, and set out to find a job in Australia and brought his family out here. So he was spent nearly every weekend down in the bushland discovering new plants, and was very enthusiastic about it. And we'd only been there 3 or 4 months when rumours started circulating that the country club was intending leasing, the council rather, was intending leasing the bush, was known as Lane Cove Park then, to the country club for an extension of the golf course. Well, we were all horrified, but we thought, well, we might have to make the best of this, and but we called a meeting. We asked the council whether this was so. They denied it at first. It wasn't until late in 1970 that they actually admitted that they had given a licence for the 19 acres of the bushland valley to the country club. So we called a meeting with other people that were interested in the new development, and we met in one of the houses. There were about 10 or 12 of us, and people were saying, what can we do, what can we do? We couldn't imagine how we were going to do anything about this. And Brian said, you just can't let them destroy this beautiful bushland. So someone suggested we call a public meeting, which is what we did, and we were surprised at the first preliminary meeting how many people we got turned up, and not only from around the bushland valley we were trying to protect, but from all over Lane Cove. So we decided to call ourselves pardon me, the Lane Cove Bushland Preservation Society. And we called an inaugural meeting. We got a central hall we could rent in the beginning of 1971, and we were amazed at how it was packed. It was absolutely packed at the meeting. And the week before, we'd heard that the council had given the country club had put up a proposal to extend the 9th hole and create a 10th one down on the edge of the Bushland Park, but still on this side of the creek. So, and that was announced at the meeting, and there was absolute uproar. So we decided the best thing to do was get up a petition, and we got over 1,000 signatures in a weekend, presented it to council, asked if we could have a meeting and talk about an alternative proposition, and they said they'd speak to us when it was appropriate. So it was 2 months later that the council approved the extension of the creation of the new holes, and it was announced at the meeting. We had a meeting a couple of days later, and one of the people at the meeting was a professional photographer, Douglas Baglin, and he said, if you show me the site, I'll go down and photograph it. So he met Dennis Craney, who was our president. He lived next door to us, and they went down early in the morning to see the site and found the bulldozers already at work. Wow. So Dennis left Douglas down there taking photographs, and he raced home, turned up at our door in a very agitated state, said to Doug, quick, we've got to go and see Mr. Cogan, who'd originally given the land to council. And we had talked to him before, and he said he didn't want the golf course extended in there. And he was a person that had legal standing to take out an injunction. So that morning he took out an injunction and had the work stopped. But it didn't stop straight away, and women and children raced down there and confronted bulldozers and stopped, and then there was other work done, and we had to go down again when trucks started turning up doing all sorts of stuff down there. And the message eventually got through that it was illegal for them to work there. So it went to the court the following week, and it was upheld in court, the injunction. So from then on, and a court case was set for May the following year. It was a year we had before the court case, before it was going to court. So it was very full on. We had a wonderful publicity officer who got quite a lot of articles in local papers and the Herald. We got speakers to support our case. Vincent Saventi, who was a local conservationist, well known in the press, and he came and looked at the park and thought it was wonderful. So his quote, "Beyond the untidy fringe," was part of a letter he wrote to the council that was, to the Herald rather, that was published. And he said, once you got beyond the untidy fringe, it was a delight, and he described it all. So he came and talked to the society. One of our early speakers we got was Joan Bradley, who was becoming well known for her efforts in bush regeneration, and she came and talked to the society. I flashed this photo before, and she produced a little booklet by then, Bush Regeneration, and she brought a number of these booklets along, and they were all snapped up in no time, and we had little groups of bush regenerators starting in bushland all around Lane Cove. So, but there was much to do in the society. We produced a pamphlet to be distributed all over Lane Cove to explain the issues associated with trying to save the Bushland Park, and that was distributed. By the time we'd been running for 6 months, we had 600 members, signed up members who'd become, and there was this great groundswell. And Dennis Craney said, you know, it was obvious we'd tapped into a groundswell of conservation awareness and people willing to act politically. So we put out this pamphlet all around Lane Cove. We had this great system organised with, some of us picked up the printing, bundled it up into hundreds, distributed those to other areas who then distributed it around, and so most of the community got letterboxed. And but understandably, the country club and the council pushed back. The council tried to change the lease to a licence, but Mr. Cogan contested that too. So, and the country club put out a leaflet looking just like ours, explaining they were the people who were saving the Bushland Park. It was really full of weeds. There were a lot of weeds, and a place for undesirables to hang out, and a bushfire threat to local residents. So they actually had a big advertisement in the in the Telegraph rather, stating these views, and we contested that, saying they were really a wolf in sheep's clothing, that they were intent on destroying the best part of the bushland. So it was quite heated for a while, and we didn't really want to oppose the country club, but it became like that. And one of their members had a demolition business. A lot of buildings in the city were being knocked down and rebuilt at that stage, so he had a constant stream of fill that could go in to our parkland, and he was very upset about it. We also found in 1971 there were new council elections, so we supported some of our members to stand, and supported them financially a little bit, and also a whole group of people got behind them, letterboxing and handing out, and we got 3 people on council. The man with the demolition business also stood, but fortunately he didn't get on. So we didn't have a majority in council, but at least we had people to have a voice for the environment in council. So at the same time, there was no survey done of all the open space in Lane Cove, so it was suggested we carry this out, and my husband put his hand up, and they produced this, which he did maps of every area and a standard form for people to fill in to gather information about all the little bits of bushland, the bigger bits, the smaller bits. So we knew what was there, and in preparation for the court case, we had a number of lawyers who were members who gave their time for nothing to prepare a case, and we also approached the Australian Museum to do a survey of the valley and do a report for us. So we also had a lot of people who'd been interested, a very good birdman, I've forgotten his first name, but someone Noski, who'd collected, been bird watching in Lane Cove and down Gore Creek, and he said within a year he collected, he noted 83 local birds, Australian native birds, and about 7 introduced species regularly use the park. So, and they also said for a small reserve it had amazing diversity of plants and habitat. So, and they said it was well worth it to be saved, and even though there were weeds, this could be eradicated and regenerated. So we had a very good report from scientists in support of our case. So in 1972, we found suddenly, the court case was looming in May, and we put out a plea for funds, people to make contributions. We got $800 in, but we didn't think that was quite enough. So eventually we decided we'd have to do some fundraising. So one of our members found there was a big old hardware store that was empty and going to be demolished in the main street of Lane Cove. So they got permission for us to use it, and we had it for a couple of weeks. We had to clean it all, paint walls, clean the windows. Christine Holland did wonderful signs on the windows for us, and we put out the word. It was a popular thing to do then. There were a lot of craft people around, particularly working in ceramics and art. There were art communities starting up. And so the word went out with all our members and everyone who had any contacts that we needed craft to come in to be sold at this. A lot of artists gave work. Some people sold on a commission, and we set up this amazing art and craft exhibition. It was just the most amazing successful. We had an opening night with wine and cheese. It was $1 a single, $2 for a double. I don't know, it seems incredible you could do wine and cheese for that price, but we had an amazing turnout, and it was packed, the whole place was packed. A lot of art was sold, and then it was open all weekend. People kept coming in. It was an amazingly successful weekend, and we made $1,000, which in those days was quite a lot of money. We'd paid $7,500 for our block of land, so that gives you some idea. It was more like $10,000, $15,000 these days at least. So suddenly we had enough money to pay for the court case. And I think that sort of community effort really galvanised our members and community and gave them a lot of energy and a shared purpose to do, to win this. But just in case we didn't win the court case, we prepared a new leaflet to go out, quite a big 4 pages, giving a lot of detail about the park and what we were trying to do there, with photographs and what have you. So that was all ready to be distributed. But at the last minute, it was settled out of court. So previously, Mr. Cogan had approached council to allow the council, the country club, to have the land that had already been bulldozed for their extra hole, and to not go any further into the Bushland Park and to withdraw the lease or the licence. So, but council refused early on, but in the end they agreed that this was, they settled out of court for those conditions. So the Bushland Park, the main part of the park was saved, and the country club kept the first reserves. And in the newsletter we put out, it was titled "Peace Restored," and our president outlined all the work that had gone into saving it, and said in the end it was because the people of Lane Cove showed they valued their bushland and were prepared to fight for it. So from then on we were kept very busy with a whole lot of other issues, and we've been going for 52 years as Shauna pointed out. So anyway, enjoy your walk through the park. I won't go any longer, but it's my memories of what happened. So yes, so enjoy your day. Thank you.
Lane Cove Bushland Park, we're seeing the very area of Lane Cove Bushland Park that was saved from golf course development back in the 70s. And I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the unique features that we have here. It's really amazing that we had that community action. As you can see, we've got the Doug Stuart bushwalk loop now, and that's actually Norma's husband, who passed away just recently. He was a very active member in the community and doing so much work as part of the society. So I've just got a map of the Bushland Park. So this is our vegetation survey that we've done. I'll just pass that around and you can have a look at that. This lovely big orange bark tree here is a giant lily pilly, or Ecmena smithii. So that's a very common rainforest tree that dominates along the creek line here. And looking like a conjoined twin is actually turpentine, so a separate tree. So where you see turpentines, that tends to indicate changing soils. We do have a number of eucalyptus in this reserve as well, and one of the main ones is the Eucalyptus pilularis, or the blackbutt, which is just behind us here on the corner of the track. It's got these lovely rough bark stocking, and then you've got these smooth creamy branches at the top. So that's one of our main eucalyptus. We also have blue gums on the other side of the creek, which I'll point out. And up the hill, and we'll come past our stand later on, you can see some pale barked, sort of pinkish trees, very smooth. That's the Angophora costata, or the Sydney red gum. We're only standing about 7 kilometres from the Sydney CBD as the crow flies. Wow. So we're that close to a city centre. So to have this here, it's really amazing. As indicated on our vegetation survey, which was done only in the last 15 years or so, they have classified the vegetation along the creek line as a threatened plant community called Coastal Escarpment Littoral Rainforest, of which there is so little remaining in Sydney. So it's really precious to have it here. You'll see that there's really dense sort of ferny understory. The canopy is really quite closed. We have a lot of vines that grow through the reserve, which are native. And one of the biggest ones that you'll notice as we walk along that creates that jungle feel is a native water vine, or Cissus hyperglauca. And it just gives that sort of rainforest feeling. So you'll see that further on. But as well as threatened plant community, we also have threatened fauna, which use this reserve. We have the grey-headed flying fox, which obviously relies on rainforests to forage. So they visit this reserve. We have the eastern bent-winged bat, which is a threatened microbat species, which ironically enough uses the golf course space to forage in and along the fringes of this reserve. And one, if we're really lucky, that we get to see is the powerful owl. So that's Australia's largest owl, and it roosts occasionally in Bushland Park along the creek line. So as we're walking along, let's look up into the dense canopy and see if we spot the owl today. It'd be pretty awesome if we could. But we do have the trifecta. We also have threatened fungi here as well. So only in the 1990s, we again had a community member discover these unusual fungi in amongst the creek line, which we'll walk past. And he was part of the Sydney Fungal Studies group. He got mycologists involved. They started studying this fungi and realised that these were fungi that had never been seen anywhere else in the world. So they're a type of hygroscopy fungi. There's about 25 to 30 species that grow here, and we'll hear more about that special critically endangered fungi community from Sophie at our next point. So that's a little bit about the reserve. So it's got some amazing natural features. That's a cabbage tree palm. That's Sydney's only native palm. It's not...
They're quite small, aren't they, around here?
So we're debating whether we should be controlling them or not, because they have been planted.
Take one and pass it along, or just have a look. But this, they mostly grow on the banks of that creek line there, all the way down to River Road where we walked in. And they like the cooler months, and as long as there's enough rain. So this winter has been perfect for them. So we've had quite a lot. So this is near the end of the season. They grow from, say, May to August. Yep. And so that's where they grow, just down there, which is great. And but so council have been aware of this, and we've been trying to protect them and work out how to manage them, which is really hard because, as you probably all know, a mushroom, a fungi, is not an animal or a plant. It's in its own kingdom, and so there's not that much known about these mushrooms in particular. So we do know they don't like being trampled, which is pretty obvious. So we used to have these lovely little walking tracks along the creek lines, along the creek banks down there, and they went right through the hygroscopy areas, which was really dumb. So we closed those down once we found out that we had these amazing little hygroscopy mushrooms there. So we closed them down. We know that's, decreased the amount of trampling. But also we know they don't like polluted water, which is pretty hard to do in an urban creek line like this. But we have encouraged, Michelle in particular, has encouraged all the residents around here to sort of be aware of these mushrooms and trying to think about reducing the amount of chemicals, herbicides, fungicides they use in their gardens and cleaning their cars. So we try to raise awareness like that. We'll also, council put in a gross pollutant trap at the top of this stream here, which just catches the big bits of rubbish, but it also reduces the amount of leaf litter that enters the system because there's already enough in this environment, and it also captures sediment. So we're doing things like that. We're also doing bush regeneration, and we've been doing bush regeneration for, as Norma said, for a long time. We're committed to that, but also the New South Wales government, the Department of Planning and Environment have given us funding for additional bush regeneration, particularly in the hygroscopy areas, to do extensive bush regeneration, just weeding, trying to reduce the weeds in those areas. And also more recently, the Department of Planning and Environment have been trying to monitor, and council have been insisting the department and trying to work out what the story is, why they occur here. Well, there's so many questions we don't know the answers to, but what they're trying to do is just establish every fruiting season from May to August is to try and come out, work out what species are coming up and where they're coming up, and then plot them. So then over time we'll have a picture of what's happening. But it's early days. I was just talking to a gentleman before who understands how much, where is he? Oh, there he is on his phone. He was saying he had something similar where he's from. So I've handed out those photos and they were all seen in this fruiting season this year.
So we're standing more or less on Kelly's Flat. So that picture showed there was a homestead here in the Depression, and it was cleared, they had cattle on it, they grew flowers and vegetables here. So this is not a pristine bushland site. In fact, this was one of the sites where bush regeneration was first undertaken by council. They didn't use the Bradley method at the time. They were doing a bit more hardcore, I guess you could call it. But they were dealing with, once the homestead had gone and it was sort of overgrown with blackberry, lantana, honeysuckle. So this whole site was clear, it had a lot of weed management going on, a bit of burning, things like that. Bit of planting as well. So this is a restoration area. Here at this point you can see the damage that has been caused by the huge amount of rain that the East Coast have had, and Sydney included, that has uprooted some of these trees. These are cheese trees that have fallen down. So these would have been all densely covering this particular part and forming part of the rainforest. So they've fallen. I guess the next lot of growth will be opportunistic, whatever comes up. And bush regeneration has been going here for quite some time, and we do use the Bradley method. You know, we started off experimenting, but the Bradley method, as you would have heard earlier, became the way that councils approach management of their bushland. So originally here we did have a lot of privet, because when they put the sewer line down along the creeks, and that brought in a lot of privet because a lot of disturbance, and privet just invaded all our creeks. Now you're hard pressed to find any. So it just goes to show how bush regeneration can work. The other weed that has been dealt with is, well, we're still dealing with it, is Tradescantia. And that's a ground cover weed which can grow from any part of the leaf or stem if it's left behind. So hard to take out of a reserve. The other thing I want to mention here is bush care has also been ongoing in this reserve since about 2002. So our volunteers have done a fantastic job, and they've dealt with the same types of weeds as well as Madeira vine, which is a shocking weed to manage. Yeah. So we're going to go up and walk past the bush care site, and thank you that you could share it with us today.